Welcome back to another episode of Fourth and Favre. This is episode number 4. And there's some significant things about the number 4. There's 4 elements of the earth, wind, water, fire. There's 4 gospels in the Bible: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Brett, did you know that there are 4 3-time NFL MVPs?
No, I did.
And there's also 4 quarterbacks that have beaten all 32 teams. And let me give you a little hint. There's something oddly familiar about both of those stats. There's one player that's done both, 3 NFL MVPs and beat all 32 teams. Do you have a guess?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say me.
It is. So talk to us. How did you get number 4? Before you came to the scene, there wasn't much hurrah over this number 4.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to give you some great extravagant story, but I was number 10 in high school. And when I came to Southern Miss, I was the lowest man on the totem pole, trust me. And I wanted 10. So like the first day of training camp, you go in, the rookies, what number you want? And our equipment manager at the time was a guy named David Bounds, who's still a good friend of mine to this day. I said, Coach Bounds, I'd like 10. He goes, that's taken. I said, who's got it? And he said, well, no one's got it. Reggie Collier, who, by the way, was, other than Bo Jackson, was the greatest athlete I've ever seen play. He was a quarterback here probably 8 years before I. Tremendous talent. Well, he had number 10. So I guess they were contemplating retiring his jersey, which if they haven't, they need to. So he said, 10's taken. I said, what about, I just went through a list of numbers. And he said, how about 4 or don't take a number at all? And I was like, okay, I'll take 4. So, it was like, you take what we offer you. I didn't have any bargaining power at the time. I was, again, lowest guy on the totem pole, but I certainly made 4, I guess, a somewhat cool number.
The only other person that came after you I can think of 4 is Dak Prescott. And I don't know if there's a significance there, but other than that, I can't think of any other 4s.
No, there's been a smattering of guys that's wore number 4. But yeah, I would say the guy that other people can relate to would be Dak. And I'm like you. I don't know if that was his number from day one or what.
Now, the number 10, why was 10 your high school number? Did it play some type of significance?
No, just what number I always liked.
Do you think, I know sometimes players, they'll pay for jersey numbers, right? Because they feel it makes them and embodies them. So when you grab 4 the first time at Southern Miss, did it feel weird wearing that number?
Well, it felt like I was the lowest man on the totem pole, number or not. I had to fight my way and claw my way to the starting position, and I was determined to make 4 a household number, if not 10, which obviously 10 was taken. So
you ended up starting your sophomore year, right, at Southern Miss?
Actually, my true freshman year. We opened with Alabama. I didn't play. The following week, we played Tulane here at home. I ended up, much like my game against Cincinnati, which kind of got my start. We were down 17-3. I made a few plays, got us back in position, and then closed it out at the end.
Was there how did you work your way from 6? Because I saw you said you were like 6th or 7th on the depth chart for quarterback. How'd you work your way to number 1 by week 2?
Well, a couple of guys got hurt in training camp. I think there were 7 or 8 on the depth chart. A couple of guys got hurt or started training camp hurt. One of the guys actually in my recruiting class, a guy by the name of Michael Jackson, who was an all-everything quarterback from Louisiana. They moved him to receiver. And then I kind of beat out a couple of guys, got a couple opportunities against the first-string defense in practice to run the scout team, and was slinging it all over the place. And that raised out eyebrows. And by the opening weekend, when we went to Alabama, I was 3rd on the depth chart. So I got to travel. And then the following week against Tulane, the 2 guys in front of me struggled a little bit, and they threw me in. Rest is history.
Did you know at the time, though, because obviously you're the gunslinger, but as a freshman, most people wouldn't go in thinking, "Hey, there's 6 guys ahead of me. I can outthrow all these guys at 18 years old." Was that your thought process, or were you looking at others first to kinda see how they threw?
Well, yeah, I was gauging how I measured up to the other quarterbacks. I knew that I had something that most guys didn't, and this was, it's like either you got tremendous speed, you got tremendous jumping ability, you got an arm strength or quickness. We're all kind of got some specialty that, whether you could sing or dance or whatever. I knew I could throw. Now, my dad, we ran the wishbone in high school, so there wasn't a lot of throwing. The ins and outs of the passing game, the changing plays, audibly, reading defenses. I was certainly not up to speed on that. I just knew I could throw with anyone, and I would put my arm up against anybody, anywhere, anytime. So when I got a chance to run the scout team, there's not a lot of reading or strategy. They hold up a card and they say, "Hey, you do this, Brett, 7-step drop, throw it to the dig route." But I said, okay, fine. But I was going to raise eyebrows. I threw laser beams, even when it called for a touch pass, because I was like, I wasn't the smartest guy, but I was like, a touch pass is not going to raise eyebrows, but one that'll take a guy's head off. He may not catch it, but they're going to say, wow, if this guy can harness this ability, maybe he can be something someday. So that was kind of my deceptive plan, if you will.
Did some of that extra mustard on the ball come from the fact that you couldn't throw in your dad's wishbone offense and you were like, "Hey, Dad, look at what I could have done"?
No, me and Dad went back and forth all the time. He was like, I'd say, Dad, on the way home from practice, Dad, if you want me to get a scholarship, you got to throw it. He's like, you let me call plays and you worry more about running. Trust me, you'll be fine. And I was like, yeah, right. Yeah, right. Well, if he were here today, he would say, I told you, just trust me. So he was right and I was wrong.
Boy, was he right. And just for the fans out there or people listening, the other 3 three-time NFL MVPs, Johnny Unitas, Tom Brady, and Jim Brown. The other 3 quarterbacks to beat all 32 teams, including yourself, would be Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and Peyton Manning. It's not bad company to be in. So let's segue into college football. It's wow, like it's with the NIL, everything going on, college football is still pretty exciting. It's one of those things that I think a lot of fans still get up for because there's so many people at institutions. And we're not going to really touch on Ohio State and Indiana. They did what we knew that they were going to do. Ohio State steamrolled UCLA 48-10. Indiana beat Wisconsin, which is weird. Once upon a time, Indiana would beat Wisconsin.
Correct.
Let's talk about number 3, Texas A&M and South Carolina. Before we get to the game, there was an incident with a Texas State trooper, and I just want to say, I know Veterans Day was in the past, but one, I want to give a shout out to my favorite veteran. My mom served the United States Air Force, Mama Kano. So we love law enforcement, our military, as you do. I saw your post go up about that, but there was an incident with a Texas State trooper kind of looking like he went into the South Carolina players. I watched it back several times, Brett. I didn't like it. I don't know what his intentions were, but it just seems like when you're in a certain environment, I know you're law enforcement, but you should also maybe be aware that, hey, there's a game going on.
Yeah, I saw it too. I hope there was no ill intent on his part. But you're right. I mean, law enforcement is very important to our country's success day in and day out. And I would not want their job at all. But he probably should have yielded to the players. Players were walking out, going to play a game, give them a wide berth. Again, I hope there was no ill intentions, but it certainly didn't come off very well.
My cousins are sheriffs, best friends, police officers and detectives, and I think they would agree with me that, hey, and you as well, that maybe yielding, knowing your situation. And by the way, his bosses, the higher ups, had sent him home. So it was an unfortunate incident that took away from what a great game. I mean, Texas A&M was down 27 points, 30-3. I caught the last quarter and I thought, are they going to make a comeback? How does South Carolina not score 1 point? Not 1 point. And to me, it just comes down to coaching at that moment in time.
Well, yes and no. I I think most people, unless you're South Carolina fans, was shocked at the halftime score at A, by the way, which is an incredibly hard place to play and loud. But up till halftime, it looked like South Carolina was the favorite and the home team. But oftentimes, not that the teams always come back and win, but oftentimes when there's that much of a lopsided half, certainly the first half is what we're talking about. The second half doesn't really equate to what they did in the first half. And that was the case. I mean, A&M, they regrouped at halftime. I'm sure there was a lot of yelling and screaming, but also some reality checks. Like, hey guys, you're getting your fannies beat 30-3. Now that's a softer word, but you know what I'm talking about. They probably got a good butt chewing. And, if I were the coach, I would have said, look, I don't know if we're going to win this game, but I tell you what, we're going to win the second half. Because the way you guys have played, give South Carolina a lot of credit. Their quarterback has got tremendous ability. I think they're well coached. I like Shane Beamer, but they just, much as success as they had in the first half, they ran into a buzzsaw the second half. Hornet's nest, whatever you want to call it. That was the A&M team that we expected to start the game with, in regards to how they played the second half. I wasn't surprised by the comeback. I was surprised more that they won because I'm like you. The comeback was one thing, but the fact that South Carolina couldn't get 3 points, and I tip my hat to A&M. Just a tremendous way of fighting back and not losing your composure and winning the game.
So you wouldn't attribute, so it's a little bit of the coaching you're saying, but it's also the getting the players fired up. For example, if you were the quarterback on the A&M sideline, knowing that you were down 27, you would have thought that you could still go in and beat this team?
Yeah, I do. And, I'm not pointing the blame at coaching because I haven't dissected the game. It'd be unfair to them for me to, judge them without studying the film. I didn't watch very detailed play by play to say, why did they do this? Or why did they do that? Or why didn't they take more advantage of the time or this or that? I really didn't pay that much attention. I was just kind of watching like any typical fan. But I tell you, the one thing that was obvious is A&M, what they lacked in the first half, they made up for in the second half. And I don't know if it was anything earth-shattering, like some revelation. I think it was just they played to the potential that we have come to know with them this season.
And that takes us to Oklahoma and Alabama. I mean, we got our first upset in the top 10 yesterday. I mean, Oklahoma was 11, but they go to Alabama, Tuscaloosa, they get it done by 2 points. This is going to shake up our college football playoff series a little bit. Alabama, are they still going to get in at this point with that loss to Oklahoma? And just what are your overall thoughts on that game?
Well, Oklahoma deserved to win. They outplayed them. And I think Alabama, after the Florida State game, which they did play very well and lost, they have kind of rebounded. But here late, they've had a couple of close calls. But Oklahoma's no slouch. They've been ranked and in contention all year long. Lost some close games, won some close games. That was obvious yesterday. It was a tough game that could have gone either way. If you're just a fan of football, you had to be enjoying just the game itself. I don't know if Alabama, I'm not on the committee. No one asked me, but I think 2 losses is certainly going to hurt their chances considerably.
It was interesting after the game. I like to look at kind of psychology, and Oklahoma players were taking pictures on the Alabama logo, and some of their staff members said, "Hey, you can't do that. We've seen this in the NFL." I'm sure you remember Terrell Owens running to the Dallas Star. What is it about the logos in sports that when an opposing rival team goes and takes a picture, the other team doesn't like that?
Well, that's kind of like invading someone's house. That's the way you look at it. That's the way as a coach that you always, hey, you defend your house with everything you got. So if you look at it that way, you can see why there's a lot of hostility towards it.
The last top 10 team, a game that I want to kind of go through, everything else kind of panned out. Texas Tech won big, Oregon won, Notre Dame is the Texas and Georgia game, and we've been talking about Texas, how they've been making these strides and comebacks, beating Vanderbilt a couple weeks back, but then they run into Georgia at Georgia, and this game was borderline close. And then I was watching the second half, and then this is where I think Kirby Smart did a phenomenal job. I think it was about 4th and 3 on their Georgia side, and Kirk Herbstreit was like, "I don't think they're gonna go for it," but I think they might go for it. It was 4th and 1, and he did go for it. They got it. They went on a 4th and 5, got it, and then they kind of ran away with it. Again, coaching is something it's like a game of inches in college football. Kirby Smart versus Sark. I mean, Sark's an offensive mind. Did you see the end of this game and how it was close and Arch was doing
Yeah.
great? And then they just kind of the onside kick that Kirby
Yeah.
did.
Well, it seems like people now go for fourth down conversions, pros and college, way more frequent than they used to. Pretty ballsy on Kirby's part to go for those, but even more ballsy for the onside kick. I think it was ingenious and executed to perfection, and it caught him totally off guard. And that was, to me, was the deciding dagger in the heart.
I don't even think they needed the onside kick. I saw he went for it. It was like you said, you couldn't have got a more perfect kick, a more perfect recovery. I mean, the guy wasn't even touched when he grabbed the ball and fell on it and then kind of got up. But it wasn't needed, but it was like you said, the dagger that did it. Again, coaching in the fourth downs, why and where did this come from? To me, when I search my memory bank, I think of Mike Tomlin. He started going for it a lot more in the NFL, and then I saw Belichick going for it more. But from your experience, where did you see this? It's like Madden football, right? You go out for it on 4th down.
Yeah, well, I saw Kirby's interview, I think either the start of the fourth quarter or coming out at halftime. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but he was asked about going for the 4th downs, and he said, "I believe in my quarterback and I believe in my team." And that is more than anything the deciding factor. You got to trust your players and your team. And sometimes, there's all these analytics in the game today. The sheet says go for it. The sheet says, but I still think the gut ultimately has the final say. I just feel like we should do this, or I feel like we should do that, based on and your team and your teammates and each individual and what their mental and physical capabilities are, and pushing them to that breaking point. And I think that Kirby Smart, in those particular times, 4th down and the onside kick, just felt like it was the right time and felt like his kids could execute. Now the onside kick, a lot of factors could go in getting it or not getting it, but obviously he felt confident that they could kick it pretty close to where they needed to kick it to and catch him off guard, which the catching him off guard was definitely not a surprise. Nothing against Texas at all. You would never expect that in that situation, which is when you run plays like that, when they least expect it. So it was perfect time.
This all but eliminates Texas from the college football playoff series, and I think it'll be interesting to see as it gets towards these conference championships, which brings us to the NFL. You made a post about Reggie White, and there's something about Reggie that people still know who he was, how big of a giant he was. I think you said he was a giant among the elites, and you think about all these great defensive ends in NFL history, starting from modern day TJ Watt, you have Bosa, we have back in the day Bruce Smith. But what was it about Reggie White, and could he still play at this level in this NFL?
He could play at any level anytime he wanted. He was so imposing, but he was such a big kid and such a joy to be around. He imitated a lot of people. He was very good at it. He used to do Howard Cosell and Muhammad Ali as if they were sitting there talking. And if you had your eyes closed, you'd think that both of those guys were in the room, which people didn't get to see that side of it. In the locker room, he was a big kid. But make no mistakes about it. When the lights came on, if you didn't double and triple team him, you were going to pay a hefty price. Which, if you go back to the New England Super Bowl 31, I don't even know how many times Reggie White name was mentioned. But if it were, I haven't gone back and ever watched the TV telecast of the game. But I'm sure that there were times where they said, Reggie White's being held in check pretty good in this game. He hasn't been a factor. That's because he was double and triple teamed the whole time. But when they finally took the right tackle and had him block Reggie by himself, he had 2 or 3 sacks like right behind each other. And then you go as a coach, well, that's why we double and triple team. So that was Reggie in a nutshell. But I promised everyone I'd tell them a Reggie story. One of my favorite Reggie stories, and I know not very many people have heard this. I'm doing a commercial with him. I think it was for right guard. It was off season. We did it at Soldier Field. The company that was putting it on picked me up in Mississippi, me and my wife, Deanna, and my agent, Bus. And we flew to Tennessee, and we picked up Reggie and his wife, Sarah, and we flew to Chicago, and it was a 2-day shoot. So after we got there, went straight to Soldier Field. We shot all day. We're starving to death. Well, we get in a limo. It is me and Deanna and Bus, my agent, Reggie and Sarah, and the driver. And we were like, we're starving. Well, Deanna, she can smell a Popeyes from anywhere. She was like, I think we passed a Popeyes, or there's got to be one on the way to the hotel. The driver was like, well, yeah, it's in a bad part of town. And Reggie was like, that's okay. You got Reggie with you. So we were like, okay, we got Reggie White with us, So we go to this Popeyes. I don't know where it was, what part of town it was, but I was the only white guy in the restaurant. And just Reggie and I went in. We had everybody's order. And we go in, and it's packed. And I'm like standing behind Reggie every once in a while. It was, it took us a while. No one had any clue who we were at the time. So we get up to the counter. The guy's like, can I take y'all's order? And when Reggie goes to start order, the guy looks at me and he's like, and I was like, I wasn't going to offer any, I was like, and I had a feeling that he kind of knew who I was. Well, the guy back in the kitchen that was frying the chicken, or one of the guys, he had flour all over he sees me and he goes, Brett Favre. He comes around behind the kitchen, jumps over the counter, and, like, give me some dap. And so I dapped him up. Flour goes everywhere. And he's like, Brett, MF and Favre, our Popeyes. I mean, he's going and now everyone knows. No one has recognized at all that Reggie White is standing right next to me, which I thought is absolutely insane. Well, one of the guys that was behind the counter looked at Reggie and goes, I know you. Dave Dorson, which was obviously not even close. Dave Dorson played with Chicago Bears. So we got our chicken, went in. We're like, you're not going to believe what happened. They didn't know who Reggie was. They knew who I was, and they made a big scene, but it was all good. It was funny. We had a big laugh about it. And good chicken.
What year was this, Brett?
It had to be around 96, 97, 95, somewhere around there. Right when we were at our, probably at the peak of our success.
Was Deanna telling you, like, why do you have flour on your arm? And is there salmonella on there?
No, I got the flour off by the time we went out there. But when we told them the story, they got the biggest laugh. And me and Reggie laughed about that and told that story to the locker room 1,000 times.
I can't imagine if that was today with all the cell phones and social media.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys probably would have never been able to even get out of the car.
You're right. But there was no cell phones then.
When Reggie passed, was that surprising to you? And how hard did that hit you?
No, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And yeah, I was shocked. I mean, Reggie was, I think, 42. So, he was very young. And he and I stayed in constant contact. Like the week before he died, we had a conversation, and he was telling me he had been retired maybe a year. And he said, "You're not going to believe what I'm getting into." And I was like, "What, Reggie?" Sometimes we called him Big Dog. I said, "What, Big Dog?" He said, "Oh, I'm getting into NASCAR." And like, if anybody can get into NASCAR, it's Reggie White. So we had that conversation just a week before he passed. And when he passed, I think everyone was shocked because he was one of those larger than life figures that you thought would live forever. So imposing. And then just like that, he's gone. But one of the big honors of my career in life was being asked to be a pallbearer for him. Something I wish I would never had to do, but was a pallbearer for him at his funeral.
I know I've talked to people that played with him, and I've talked to you off camera for the past couple years every now and then, and everyone said that Reggie, he lived what he preached, and it's very
Yeah.
rare where people live a life of what they're saying, but, can you confirm that?
Oh, absolutely. Reggie, was a minister. Is known as a minister of defense, but he, he didn't walk around just constantly preaching to everyone, but he did practice what he preached. He didn't curse. Uh, he was very soft spoken. He would offer, like if you said, "Big Dog, I'm struggling with the word or with this or with that," he would, "Hey, sit down. Let's talk about it." He was always there mentoring either from a biblical perspective or just I've lived this for example, maybe someone's like struggling with football or with daily life things. You could go to Reggie and he would definitely, when you got done talking to him, you felt completely 100% better.
I know we don't talk about this enough, or I don't talk about it enough of just my faith in Christianity and Jesus Christ, and it's one of the hardest it's the hardest thing I've ever tried to do is living a life like a Reggie that emulates, the teachings of Jesus and God because, man, life comes and throws you curveballs, hardballs, screwballs, and then to live this out is like it's so difficult. So you being able to be a part of Reggie
Yeah.
and we've had these off the camera conversations as well is there's something to be said about a man of God.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause it's tough. Yeah. I think the misconception, and I know it's the misconception from believers and non-believers are infant believers. And, your non-believers, they don't believe, but we all are, because you're a Christian doesn't mean you don't sin. Uh, in fact, you become a target more so than the non-believers. Uh, and it becomes tougher to be that Christian. But you know, Jesus Christ offers redemption and forgiveness.
Mm.
Uh, he knows that we're going to fail, but he wants us to acknowledge that and try to do better. And that's what we as Christians, we take 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, and then we feel guilty and have shame. Um, and that's part of it. But you know, Reggie was the closest thing to Jesus Christ. Uh, he just had that aura about him, and you could go to him for anything. He was just an unbelievable person. He was a tremendous player,
Mm.
but aside from that, he was an even better person.
He kind of reminds me of Apostle Paul, who said, "There's no plight uncommon to man." And Paul said, "I beat my flesh daily into submission." So I try to avoid all these things. I mean, we could go into Romans 7, which is my favorite chapters about the things I want to do, I don't do. The things I do, I don't
Yeah, the
want to do.
thorn.
Yeah, exactly. So I appreciate that story about Reggie. I'm sure the fans are going to love it when this thing drops. And thank you for sharing that with us, which is
Yeah.
going to bring us to the NFL. News broke this morning. Jets player Chris Boyd was shot at a restaurant in New York City. He's in critical but stable condition. That said it happened around 2 a.m. at the Say Less restaurant. So one is I don't know the ins and outs of this or who this is, but thoughts and prayers go out to him and just thoughts about being out late. It's especially in New York City, it's not Green Bay or where it might be a little bit safer.
Yeah, it might be a little bit safer in Green Bay, and you might not be out at 2 o'clock in Green Bay. New York, being out at 2 o'clock is not a big deal.
Right.
It's a big, it's a big city. Lots to do, lots of places to eat, lots of places to hang out. Yeah, I'm like you. I don't know this young man, but it sounds like he was enjoying himself at a restaurant, regardless if it was 2 or 8 o'clock. It's sad that we have to talk about this more and more these days. But prayers, like you said, for him and his family.
And just some quick contenders versus pretenders in the NFL. I'll just say this for me, and I'll let you comment. I'm going to start with the AFC first. The Patriots with Drake May playing the way he is shocking, and I'm thinking that I would never thought I would say this. The Patriots are looking like contenders, not pretenders. The Bills are right there. Uh, Aaron's struggling a bit with Pittsburgh, and you have obviously Mahomes is right there and Josh Allen. But I'm going to put this out there. I think we're going to see New England in the conference championship, maybe against Buffalo or Kansas City. I don't know how Drake is playing this good at this early in his career, but that's my AFC contenders are right now. The Chargers just remind me of Oregon. They can never really get it done. And no pun intended with Justin Herbert being the captain of that ship.
Yeah, well, that could change this year. I mean, they're definitely in the thick of it. You can never rule Kansas City out with Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes. You can never rule them out. They'll be right there in the thick of it, right at the end. I agree with you. New England, at some point you got to acknowledge that they're for real. Now, will they maintain that and stay consistent? Time will tell. No one is super consistent. But Drake May reminds me a lot this year of Jaden Daniels last year. Like, whatever you throw at him, he has an answer and is playing at a super high level. And if things continue to go the way they're going now, they're probably going to win that division. Who would have said that at the start of the year? So hats off to Vrabel and Drake May, and you can't rule Josh Allen out, so we'll see what happens in that division. I think Aaron it has played well. Last week he didn't play. He acknowledged that after his best, and they lost, but they'll be in the playoffs. They'll probably win their division, and if he stays healthy, he's still got tons of potential, and can beat you with any throw. Can still make all the throws. So I wouldn't rule them out as well.
And what's interesting, I mean, I think Baltimore's out, but when Lamar's in there, they win. And so he finally came back from his injury. Baltimore got in there. I do see the conference championship. I see New England and either Kansas City or Buffalo in there. For some reason, that's what I'm seeing. I could be wrong. But one of those,
Putting Kansas City in the conference championship is certainly not wrong. Now, they've struggled a little bit, but I would not be surprised if they're not in the championship again.
NFC, the Eagles are playing really well. Jalen Hurts, the Lions, I mean, they're kind of like that unsung team that's not supposed to do well, but Dan Campbell and Jared Goff, I mean, week in and week out, those guys play with their hearts out. Green Bay, I mean, Jordan Love's had a couple bad games. He had this big high against the Steelers, and now he's kind of simmered down a bit. But Eagles and Lions, I see them neck and neck, and I just kind of wish Brock Purdy. I mean, he has such a great story, and he's struggling with the injuries. Would the 49ers be different
Right.
with him in there healthy? But Like Eagles and Lions, I think are right there.
Yeah, and I tell you, I'm gonna throw another one out that could easily represent the NFC, and that's the Rams. The Rams are playing outstanding. Stafford is playing fabulous. And he's done it for a long time, but he is playing at a high level, and they can beat anyone at any time. So at this point in the season, I would say the Buccaneers have a shot. The Eagles definitely have a shot, and until someone unseats them, they're the favorite, just because they've been there and done that. The Lions certainly are right up there, barring injury. I think they're certainly a contender. But the Rams and the Seahawks, I think, are really playing well. Sam Darnold's playing lights out. I mean, that guy is playing incredible, and I'm happy for him. I don't really know Sam, but he's bounced around from team to team, much like Baker Mayfield, and they continue to prove people wrong over and over again. So kudos to Sam and John Schneider, the GM there at Seattle, who's, by the way, is from Green Bay, for going out and getting Sam and making that work.
Last thing on the plate for today, UFC. Me and you, we talk about this at least once every couple of weeks. Nate Diaz, I don't know if you saw this, he reposted your post this week. So shout out to Nate Diaz. Obviously, he's a fan.
That means Nate, he don't want to fight me. Thank goodness. We're tight. We're tight. That's my homie.
209 Stockton. That's their mantra, right? Stockton, California is like 209. Been up there. It's a rough area. I don't think you want to go to a Popeyes out there alone.
Not unless I got Nate with me.
Then you're good. You're good to go.
Yeah.
But major lightweight championship, Islam Makhachev became 2-time champion. He was formerly champion in lightweight. Now he moved up to welterweight, beats Jack Della Maddalena, JDM. And he was dominant throughout. I watched the entire fight, just mauled him. He comes from Khabib's camp, and Khabib's father was his first trainer. The Dagestani, they have this wrestling that just brutal. So what are your thoughts on Islam's reign as welterweight champion?
Well, much like Khabib, they just maul you to death. I mean, it's like they just enter into your territory without, and you can't do anything about it. I mean, they just maul you to death. And that Islam, I mean, it's like, much like Khabib. I mean, not that they're not technicians. They just, after a while, it would seem to me like Islam is 200 pounds heavier than his opponent. That's the way it seems when they fight. It's just like, there's nothing you can do, but just take it. And I mean, it's frightening for all the other fighters because they seem invincible to me. Khabib and Islam.
Dan Henderson told me, and it's in his book, that if he never went to Russia, he would have never made the Olympics in the United States. He said those guys, me training out there, pushed me to get into the Olympics because the level of wrestling was so much higher. And when you train with these guys, and when I train jiu-jitsu, I'll have a guy that's 140 and I'm like 215. And if he's really good, it feels like you're being suffocated. Whereas if you have a 300-pound guy that doesn't know what he's doing, I mean, then you can get out of it. But exactly what you said, it feels like you're being suffocated to death.
Yeah. And you can't do anything about it. That's what's frightening. But hats off to Islam. It was a heck of a fight.
There was 2 other welterweight fights, and just as a side note, Leon Edwards, former champion, got put to sleep by Carlos Prates. I think that's the end of an era for Leon, who was former welterweight champion. And then Michael Morales, you have these guys that are unknown, beats TKO Sean Brady. And I think with the UFC, in the past, they had these big stars, right? You have a John Jones, Randy Couture. We go back to those days, George St. Pierre. And they're trying to find that next star. And there might be some coming to the fold. Also, Valentina Shevchenko kept her title as well. Is there's a White House UFC coming 2026, Brett? Trump said he's going to put it on there. Do you think you're going to see yourself there to watch this historic UFC at the White House?
I'll be honest with you. That would be that would be pretty cool, but I would much rather watch it from the privacy of my living room. That way I can get up, go back, sit down, take a break, whatever, without any distractions. And I'm kind of the same way when it comes to football. I'd much, people are like, oh, it'd be so cool to be there. And I'm thinking, I don't know. I'd kind of like it, my recliner. I mean, say the fight or the game or whatever is not going the way you'd like, turn it to something else or get up and walk outside. You can't do that when you're at a venue.
People don't realize, especially at the fight, even if you're cage side, I'll be 3 rows back. I still got to watch the TV screen
Yeah.
and then you don't hear anything. So you're commentating to yourself. Joe Rogan, DC, they're not talking. You're just having to think. If you don't know what's going on, then you're just there. So like you said, the privacy can be the best place sometimes. Okay, number 4, Hail Mary question. What is the longest play call you've ever had, and who gave it to you?
Well, the West Coast offense is very wordy. And I'm not saying this is the longest, but it's the one I repeat back to people all the time when they say, give me a play call. Brown left, tight close, Z right, sprint right solid, Z quick drag. I think it's 17 words. And I remember asking Mike Holmgren, it was a goal line play, and all it was it was a very packed in formation. Sterling was the wing off the left side and had 2 backs in the backfield. I was under center, and basically I kicked Sterling in motion. As soon as he got to the outside hip of the outside guy, I snapped it, and he ran to the front pylon. And all I did was take 2 or 3 steps and throw it right to him at the front pylon. So I remember asking Mike Holmgren, I'm like, can we just call this like Sterling pylon? And he was like, you run the damn play I call and call it the way I say to call it, or I'll find somebody else for. And I was like, okay, I can deal with it.
Did he really say that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He gave me a hard time, rightfully so. I probably deserved 99% of it.
Can you say that play one more time, a little bit slower?
Brown left, tight, close, Z right, sprint right solid, Z quick drag.
Do you know what each one of those phrases means as well?
Yeah, I didn't at the time, but Brown was the formation. Brown left signals the strength is to the left. Tight close meant Sterling would usually be out wide. The other receiver would be out wide. Well, that meant one side was, instead of going tight just meant the same thing as close. That just condensed the formation down to, almost a huddle. Z right was the motion right. Sprint right was my action. I'm sprinting to the right. And solid meant the front side block. No one was out for a pass except one guy, Sterling. And that was the Z quick drag.
Wow. Episode 4 with number 4. There will never be another 4 quite like you, Brett. Thanks so much for another episode of Fourth and Favre.
Thank you, David.